As the study of the Kybalion continues to unfold, there's a palpable sense that we're approaching something monumental. After all, when you realize this book contains only 15 chapters, it's clear that we are nearing the peak of an extraordinary initiation. But what makes this moment so powerful isn't just the content of the Kybalion. It's the fact that revisiting this wisdom, through live discussions and audience engagement, transforms how deeply we grasp its Hermetic philosophy. Every dialogue, every question, pushes us to go beyond simple reading. It forces us to embody the universal laws and principles like polarity, vibration, and correspondence. And if you've been following this journey, you know by now, the Kybalion is not just a book. It's a roadmap for spiritual evolution. What's most fascinating about returning to the Kybalion, especially as we dissect it chapter by chapter, is how this ancient esoteric wisdom seems to evolve with us. When you revisit these texts, new meanings emerge, meanings you couldn't have understood the first time. That's the beauty of Hermeticism and symbolic language. They speak directly to consciousness, not just intellect. It's like Hermes Trismegistus himself encoded layers of truths only visible when you're ready. And this is why studying with others, creating a space of shared energy and resonance, allows those hidden insights to rise to the surface. The transmission of wisdom becomes an act of vibration itself, one mind to another across time. And isn't it striking to think about why we do this? Because keeping alive this sacred knowledge is not just an intellectual exercise. It's a duty, a service to humanity. Think of all the civilizations that came before us, where Hermetic philosophy, Platonic ideals, and Eastern philosophy converge to preserve the understanding of universal laws. Today, as modern life tries to drown us in noise, initiating new minds into these teachings is like lighting the sacred flame that must never die. The cosmic order depends on those willing to carry the light forward, as part of an ancient lineage of wisdom keepers. People who understand that the whole is sustained by those few who choose to remember. And speaking of remembering, we can't ignore the symbolic power of the Kybalion's introductory poem by Edward Carpenter. That poem isn't there by accident. It's a reminder that knowledge transmission is sacred work, bound by the duty of initiation. Carpenter speaks to something deeply mystical, pointing to archetypal wisdom that passes from teacher to disciple like a sacred flame. It reminds us that what we are doing here, studying, reflecting, discussing, is more than just learning. It is participating in a cosmic hierarchy, where those aligned with the divine essence act as bridges between the unseen worlds and this material plane. This is what makes the Kybalion alive. Its spiritual hierarchy echoes every time we engage with it. And as we stand on this threshold, one step closer to the final chapters, a deeper reflection arises. What is our role in transmitting this sacred knowledge to others? Because once you receive Hermetic wisdom, the responsibility is no longer just to know. It's to embody and share. And that's where we open the door to something crucial: the individual influence each person can exert on the world. If you've ever doubted that one person can make a difference in the grand cosmic dance, wait until you see how Hermeticism, through the next topic, teaches that even a single flame can light up the darkest night. Chapter 1. The Importance of Individual Influence in the World. One of the most powerful, yet overlooked, teachings within Hermeticism and the Kybalion is the idea that one individual, fully aligned with universal laws, can change the world around them. You don't need to be a famous guru or a public figure to radiate the sacred flame of wisdom. In fact, the Kybalion itself, authored anonymously, reminds us that true influence isn't measured by how many people know your name, but by the quality of the vibration you carry. Like Hermes Trismegistus said, "As above, so below, which means that even the smallest force, if aligned with the whole, can impact the greater cosmic order. And isn't that freeing? You don't need permission to become a beacon of consciousness in this world. If you think one person's influence is too small, remember the Buddhist parable of the Benares sermon, where a single flame, lit in darkness, becomes a guide for many. The same way a sacred flame doesn't lose its fire by lighting another candle, your wisdom and spiritual light multiply when shared. This is the real alchemy of knowledge. It grows stronger the more it's transmitted. Imagine walking into a room full of chaos, but because you hold yourself in mental elevation, you calm the space without a word. That's vibration and resonance in action. And yet, most people doubt their own capacity to influence the energetic balance of their surroundings, when in truth, you are always influencing, whether consciously or unconsciously. Fire, as a metaphor, is at the core of esoteric wisdom, a symbol of energy balance, enlightenment, and transmission of sacred knowledge. It burns without depletion, reminding us that sharing wisdom doesn't empty you. It expands your inner light. Think about when you explain something profound to a friend. Don't you often understand it even better after speaking it out loud? That's because the principle of correspondence is working. What you give outwardly also grows inwardly. So when the Kybalion speaks of vibration, polarity, and mental transmutation, it's also teaching us that transmitting wisdom is part of personal transformation. The more you share, the more you refine yourself in return. In today's world, people strive so hard to stand out, chasing recognition, fame, likes, and followers. But Hermeticism teaches a deeper truth. There are only two ways to truly stand out, either as another member of a distracted crowd or as a singular beacon of inner mastery. And while the crowd fades with time, those who hold the sacred flame of wisdom leave an eternal imprint in the spiritual hierarchy of humanity. Look at history. Who do we remember? The wisdom keepers, the initiates, the thinkers who embodied archetypal wisdom and transmitted it for the sake of spiritual evolution, not personal gain. Those are the ones who shaped civilizations and elevated consciousness through the ages. And that leads us to a powerful realization. History itself is shaped by those few who dare to preserve and share higher knowledge. Without them, Hermeticism, Pythagorean teachings, and Platonic ideals would have been lost to time. But they weren't, because a lineage of individuals chose to carry the sacred flame forward. And as we prepare to explore the historical continuity of Hermetic philosophy, we'll see how this wisdom has survived through the hands of those silent guardians, and why you, too, are now part of that same unbroken chain. Chapter 2. The Historical Continuity of Hermetic Philosophy. When we talk about Hermeticism, we're not just speaking of a set of ideas locked in time. We're tapping into a living tradition that has been transmitted across civilizations, carried by generations of wisdom keepers. From the temples of ancient Egypt to the academies of Greece, and later into the secret gatherings of the Renaissance, the sacred knowledge of Hermes Trismegistus has quietly shaped the very foundations of philosophy, science, and spiritual thought. And if you think about it, isn't that amazing? Something so ancient, so profound, still reaching us today, whispering through the Kybalion, through symbolic language, and through the universal laws that govern the whole of existence. Consider for a moment figures like Marsilio Ficino, the Renaissance philosopher who dared to bring Hermetic texts back to life when Europe was sinking into dogma and rigid thinking. Ficino wasn't just reading these works for entertainment. He was part of a spiritual movement that understood the responsibility of wisdom transmission. He knew that in order to align with the cosmic order, humanity had to remember its connection to the divine essence, and Hermetic philosophy was the bridge. And so, He and others like him preserve and passed on these teachings, knowing they weren't just preserving history. They were preserving a path to enlightenment and spiritual evolution. And isn't it fascinating that the Kybalion itself continues this same legacy? We don't even know the names of its authors, the three initiates, and that anonymity speaks volumes. Instead of seeking personal recognition, they chose to let the wisdom stand on its own merit. This is archetypal wisdom in action, truth that doesn't depend on who speaks it, but on the resonance it awakens in those ready to hear. And this is a powerful reminder for anyone studying Hermeticism today. It's not about fame or ego. It's about aligning with the vibrational plane of higher knowledge, contributing to the spiritual hierarchy that has always preserved truth for those ready to receive it. But here's something crucial. In a world obsessed with proof and credentials, Hermetic philosophy teaches us discernment. The ability to evaluate truth not by external validation, but by the correspondence and resonance it creates within. You don't need someone's title or academic background to decide if what they say is true. You need to feel if their words vibrate in alignment with cosmic principles, if they awaken self-knowledge, moral refinement, and a recognition of unity beyond duality. That's why the Kybalion never wastes time convincing anyone. It simply presents the laws and leaves the rest to the consciousness of the seeker. And as we look ahead, it becomes clear why the principle of polarity, the focus of Chapter 10, is such a central pillar in this tradition. Because polarity is everywhere, in light and shadow, in joy and pain, in the tension between spirit and matter. And understanding this duality within unity is what allowed Hermetic philosophy to survive through the ages, adapting but never breaking. So as we prepare to explore this principle, we step right into the heart of mental transmutation and alchemy, the art of reconciling opposites, of finding peace in paradox, and of transforming ourselves through the wisdom that has been carried like a sacred flame for millennia. Chapter 3. The Principle of Polarity. If there's one concept that completely shifts the way we see reality, it's the principle of polarity, one of the most profound keys to Hermeticism and the Kybalion. The phrase itself is simple. Everything is dual. Everything has two poles. But behind these words lies a powerful revelation. All things in existence contain their opposite within them. What we usually see as opposites, light and darkness, love and hate, life and death, are simply the same thing, expressed in different degrees. Imagine a thermometer. Is there really a sharp line where cold becomes hot? Or are both just vibrations of temperature along the same scale? And what if the same applies to every part of life? This is where Western minds often struggle, because we're trained to think in black and white, right and wrong, good and bad, as if they were isolated, fixed things. But Hermetic wisdom, much like Eastern philosophy and Taoism, shows us that reality is not that rigid. Instead, duality and unity are part of a great cosmic dance, a vibrational plane that allows everything to exist in relation to its opposite. Think of love and hate. They are not different forces, but two extremes of the same emotional energy, like two sides of one coin. And once you realize that, you start seeing that nothing is fixed, and everything can be transmuted from one pole to another. Now it's real power, right? Another beautiful insight from the Kybalion is that paradoxes exist because of our limited perspective. From a higher level of consciousness, all contradictions dissolve, because you start seeing the unifying principle beneath apparent opposites. Take, for example, life and death. While we fear death as the opposite of life, Hermeticism teaches that both are part of the same cosmic cycle. Just like night and day are simply movements of the earth, life and death are movements of energy and spirit. And when we embrace this archetypal wisdom, we stop fighting against reality and start learning how to flow with the cosmic order, recognizing that duality is part of unity. But here's a mind-blowing truth. Everything you want to change about yourself already exists within you, at the opposite pole. If you think you're weak, the Kybalion would say that strength is already within you, waiting to be cultivated. If you feel trapped in fear, courage is right there, just on the other side of the same emotional energy. It's not about becoming someone else, but about mentally transmuting from one degree to another along the same scale. And this is where alchemy, as taught in Hermeticism, becomes a practical tool, not about turning lead into gold physically, but about turning inner darkness into light through conscious transformation. And of course, understanding polarity is not just a theory. It's a key for real-life action. Think about how many times we react to situations as if they're all or nothing. But once you grasp that opposites are identical in nature, you realize that by shifting a few degrees, you can move from sadness to peace, from anger to compassion. And this prepares us to explore even deeper how this duality manifests in the universe itself, and how unity gives rise to duality. The next great secret waiting for us to uncover as we move forward. Chapter 4. Manifestation of Duality in the Universe. If everything has two poles, as the Kybalion teaches, then it makes sense that the entire universe itself is born from this principle of polarity. But here's where it gets truly mystical, because before duality, there is unity. Hermeticism, aligned with Eastern philosophy and Pythagorean teachings, shows us that from the one, the all, emerges the two, spirit and matter, light and shadow, mind and body. This is why ancient wisdom traditions speak of Brahman, or Ein Sof in Kabbalah, as that infinite unity from which all opposites flow. So even when we see conflict, tension, or division in the world, it's all born from a deeper cosmic unity, still present beneath the surface. Think about it. Everything that exists contains its opposite and potential. Where there's strength, there's also hidden fragility. Where there's joy, there's the possibility of sorrow. This is the mystical dance of duality, where life constantly oscillates between poles, just like a pendulum that swings back and forth. And here's the catch. Nothing stays in one extreme forever. If you reach the peak of joy, sooner or later, you'll experience its opposite. If you fall into deep sadness, eventually, there's a swing toward hope. This is the law of rhythm and polarity working together, a dynamic flow that governs all existence, whether we're aware of it or not. And if you've ever studied Taoism, you'll see how this mirrors the concept of yin and yang, the intertwining of opposites, where each contains a seed of the other. Even in the darkest night, there's a glimmer of light. Even in the brightest day, the shadow is present. This is the cosmic order, the balance of energy and vibration that maintains life itself. The symbol of yin-yang isn't just a pretty design. It's a map of how the universe functions through polarity and correspondence. And the key to wisdom, as Hermeticism teaches, is not to fight against one pole or chase only the other, but to understand the unity behind both and learn how to navigate between them. Now, when we see life this way, we realize that everything is constantly transforming, and that understanding duality allows us to flow with the universe rather than fight against it. Think about how much suffering comes from resisting this natural flow, wanting only pleasure, never pain, seeking only gain, never loss. But when you embrace that both are part of the same vibrational plane, you stop being controlled by them. Instead, you gain the power to move between them with awareness, as a master of mental transmutation and alchemy, turning any experience into fuel for growth and spiritual evolution. And here's where the Kybalion leads us deeper. Once you understand that the one gives rise to two, and that all opposites are connected, you begin to see that polarity itself is a tool for transformation. You realize that within your darkest moments lies the seed of your greatest awakening. And that's the key to what comes next. How to consciously use polarity to shift from negative to positive, from fear to wisdom, and how this principle of opposites becomes the foundation for true self-mastery. Chapter 5. Polarity as a tool for transformation. Here's where Hermeticism becomes more than just knowledge. It becomes a practical tool for real transformation. The Kybalion doesn't just explain polarity to impress us with cosmic truths. It gives us a method to change ourselves from within. Think about it. If everything is a matter of degree, if love and hate, fear and courage, weakness and strength are all points on the same scale, then you have the power to shift where you are on that scale. That's what mental transmutation is all about. Learning how to move your mind and energy from one pole to the other, like an alchemist turning lead into gold. And believe me, once you understand this, nothing about your inner struggles stays the same. A classic metaphor from the Kybalion is the thermometer. Hot and cold aren't separate things, but degrees of temperature. You don't create heat from nothing. You increase or decrease what's already there. The same goes for your inner world. If you're stuck in fear, courage is not something you invent. It's already within you, waiting to be activated by raising your vibrational frequency. Just like turning up the heat, you can turn up the courage. If you feel envy, you can shift toward admiration, because they are two sides of the same emotional energy. And that's the alchemy of polarity, knowing you have both extremes inside you and choosing which one to cultivate. But let's get real. How do you do that in daily life? One powerful way is conscious awareness. Catching yourself when you're leaning toward a lower vibration and asking, what's the opposite pole here, and how can I move toward it? For example, when anger rises, instead of exploding, pause and ask, can I choose compassion now? And you don't need to fake it. Just shift 1 degree. Maybe from rage to irritation. Maybe from irritation to calm reflection. Over time, you'll move along the scale. The Kybalion teaches that small, consistent shifts in vibration are the path to real mastery. Just like lifting weights builds muscle over time, shifting poles builds mental and spiritual strength. And here's where vibration and polarity meet. Because by raising your vibration, you naturally shift to the higher pole of every duality. A person vibrating in love cannot easily slip into hate. A mind vibrating in clarity cannot easily be taken over by confusion. So working on your vibrational state daily, through meditation, noble reading, meaningful conversations, or even spending time in nature, is a practical way to keep yourself on the higher pole of life. And when you slip, because we all do, you'll know how to shift back. This is self-mastery in action, rooted in the universal laws that govern not only matter, but also consciousness. And as we start applying polarity to our inner life, we realize this. Our vibration doesn't just affect us. It shapes the reality we live in. Because if you can shift from fear to courage, from anger to wisdom, from hate to love, imagine what that energy does to the world around you. And that's where we're going next. Understanding how our vibrational frequency influences everything we attract, repel, and manifest in life. Chapter 6. The Impact of Vibrational Frequency on Reality. Here's a truth that the Kybalion makes crystal clear, but that most people overlook. Your vibration shapes your reality, period. We like to think that life happens to us, but Hermeticism teaches otherwise. Everything you experience is connected to the vibrational frequency you're holding right now. Like a tracks like, this is not just a pretty saying, it's the principle of resonance in action. And if that sounds like a lot of responsibility, it is. But it's also your greatest power, Because when you master your vibration, you start mastering what you attract and manifest. The question is, what are you vibrating right now? And is it aligned with what you actually want to live? Now, the tricky part is that most people let their vibration be controlled by external influences without even realizing it. Music, conversations, environments, even the news, they all feed your vibration. Spend a day listening to angry debates or violent movies and see how your energy sinks. Spend a day reading the Kybalion, reflecting on Hermetic wisdom, or being in nature, and feel the difference. Your vibrational plane shifts constantly, and if you're not actively managing it, someone or something else will. That's why mental elevation and conscious energy balance are not luxuries. They are essential if you want to live aligned with spiritual evolution and not be dragged down by collective negativity. And think about how words, thoughts, and emotions influence not just your internal state, but also what you send out to the world. When you speak kindly, when you think in noble ways, you're adjusting your vibrational frequency upward. But when you speak badly about yourself, when you fall into fear-based thinking, you are literally lowering your vibration, making it harder to attract the life you want. And the Kybalion warns us, without conscious effort, we fall to the lower pole, because the universe is always moving. So if you don't choose your direction, the world will choose it for you, and probably not in your favor. Here's something practical to reflect on. Who are the people around you? Are they uplifting your vibration or draining it? Hermetic philosophy is very clear. Vibration is contagious. If you're surrounded by negativity, it takes twice as much effort to hold a high vibration. But if you're around people who seek truth, who live with integrity, who practice self-mastery, you'll naturally be elevated. That's why building your environment consciously, choosing friends, mentors, books, even music that resonates with higher truths, is a crucial part of spiritual initiation. You are responsible for your vibrational field, and everything you let in becomes part of you. And as you become more aware of how vibration shapes reality, something incredible happens. You start seeing that this isn't just about your personal life. Your vibration contributes to the collective energy of humanity. Every thought of love, every act of kindness, amplifies light in the world, while every indulgence in hate or fear feeds collective darkness. And this realization leads us to a deeper understanding of how spiritual evolution is hierarchical. Because as we'll see next, there are levels of vibration, and ascending through them means moving toward unity with the divine essence and the whole cosmic order. Chapter 7. The Hierarchical Nature of Spiritual Evolution. Here's something the Kybalion makes clear, though most people miss it on the first read. Not all vibrations are equal, and not all polarities operate on the same level. On the material plane, dualities like hot and cold or light and dark are neutral. They exist to create contrast, to give shape to experience. But as we rise into higher planes of consciousness, those polarities become hierarchical, meaning that love is superior to hate, wisdom is higher than ignorance, and justice stands above injustice. This isn't just poetic language. This is the cosmic order at work. And understanding this is key to walking the path of spiritual evolution and moral refinement. Imagine the universe like a great symbolic triangle. At the base, you find the material world, neutral dualities that govern physical existence, high and low, hot and cold. These are not better or worse. They simply are. But as you climb upward into the mental plane, you encounter dualities that do involve choice and value, like truth versus falsehood, or courage versus fear. And at the apex of the triangle, there is unity, the realm of the all, where dualities dissolve into pure being. This model is a mental map of spiritual initiation, showing how moving up in consciousness means moving from neutrality to moral polarity and ultimately to cosmic unity. And think about how this applies to your daily life. When you choose kindness over cruelty or truth over convenience, you're not just being nice. You're aligning with higher vibrational laws. You're climbing that triangle, elevating your consciousness closer to the divine essence. This is why Hermeticism, like Eastern philosophy, emphasizes virtue as a spiritual technology, because virtues like compassion, justice, and courage are not just moral ideals. They are higher frequencies that align us with cosmic unity. So when the Kybalion speaks of polarity and vibration, it's not only about understanding how the world works. It's a call to choose your place in the universal hierarchy. But here's something deeper. Vibration is also a path of return. From unity comes duality, but through spiritual evolution, we climb back toward unity. That's the great cycle of existence. We descend into matter to gain experience, to engage with dualities, but the ultimate journey is to rise again, this time with conscious awareness, toward transcendence. And that's why everything we do, think, and feel has weight. It's either helping us ascend or holding us down. So when people say, it doesn't matter what you think or do, the Kybalion would strongly disagree. Everything matters, because everything affects your place on the vibrational plane and your alignment with the cosmic order. And as we recognize this hierarchical nature of evolution, we begin to understand why noble beings and spiritual masters hold such power, not because of status, but because their vibration is higher and naturally pulls others upward. And this is where we're headed next, into the mystery of how elevated souls act as gravitational centers of spiritual wisdom, guiding others on the path without ever needing to force or convince. Chapter 8. The Influence of Noble Beings and Spiritual Masters. One of the most beautiful and often forgotten truths in Hermeticism is that vibration is contagious. The Kybalion reminds us that noble beings, spiritual masters, and those who have walked the path of self-mastery radiate a frequency so high, so aligned with the divine essence, that simply being near them elevates everyone around. You've probably felt this before, being around someone whose calm presence, wisdom, or even silence makes you feel more centered, more alive. This isn't magic or charisma. It's vibrational resonance, a direct effect of someone who lives in harmony with the universal laws, embodying archetypal wisdom and cosmic unity. Ancient traditions knew this well. From the sages of Egypt to the monks of the East, spiritual hierarchies were built around those who had refined their energy to such a degree that they became pillars of wisdom transmission. And this wasn't about fame or power. It was about being a living bridge between the material and spiritual planes. Think about the concept of ancestor veneration in many cultures, not just as a ritual, but as a way of staying connected to the vibrational plane of those who mastered life's trials and ascended to higher understanding. These wisdom keepers became reference points for what humanity could become when aligned with the whole. But what's even more inspiring is that you can become one of these noble beings. You don't need to live in a monastery or write a sacred text to raise your vibration to a level that naturally uplifts others. Every act of compassion, every effort to maintain integrity, every time you choose wisdom over reaction, you're shifting not only yourself, but the energy field around you. Hermetic philosophy teaches that the transformation of the world starts with inner transmutation. By refining your polarity, you naturally influence the polarity of those you meet. Like a tuning fork that makes other instruments vibrate in harmony, you set the tone for the environment you enter. And let's not forget, history itself is filled with examples of individuals who shaped entire civilizations simply by embodying high vibration. Figures like Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, And yes, Hermes Trismegistus didn't just teach, they lived the truth. Their presence, their alignment with the sacred flame, became a gravitational force that attracted seekers, inspired transformations, and planted seeds of wisdom that still grow today. And isn't that what real leadership looks like? Not telling people what to do, but becoming such a refined vessel of cosmic order and virtue that people can't help but be drawn to the light you carry. And this brings us to a crucial realization. The influence you have on the world is directly tied to the level of self-mastery you achieve. The more you refine your vibration, the more you naturally guide others without even trying. And as we'll see next, true power lies not in controlling others, but in mastering your own inner polarity, becoming someone who is unshakable in the face of life's chaos, who holds to truth and unity even when the world wavers. Chapter 9. The Importance of Self-Mastery and Inner Authority. If there's one lesson that stands above all in Hermetic philosophy, it's this: true power comes from mastering yourself, not from controlling others. The Kybalion teaches that polarity lives within us, and while most people are pushed back and forth by emotions, circumstances, and the chaos of life, the wise person, the one who follows the path of initiation, chooses to stand firm. Imagine a mountain, unmoved by the winds and storms around it. That's what self-mastery looks like. And let's be real, in a world that's always trying to pull you in 1,000 directions, being able to command your inner state is one of the rarest and most powerful abilities anyone can have. Think about how much of life is spent reacting to people, to problems, to fear. But Hermetic wisdom flips this upside down. Instead of reacting, you become the cause, not the effect. You become someone who, no matter what happens outside, holds to virtue, wisdom, and spiritual alignment. And this isn't just about looking calm on the surface. It's about having energy balance so strong that nothing shakes your vibration. This is what Hermes Trismegistus and the great wisdom keepers of old knew. If you don't master yourself, life will master you. And when you realize that, you see why the Kybalion insists on mental transmutation as the path to freedom. And here's a beautiful image from Plato in his idea of the golden man, the person who remains unchanged no matter the external conditions. Whether praised or insulted, rich or poor, this person holds to inner integrity and cosmic unity. What if you lived like that? What if, instead of being tossed around by life, you became the stable center of your world? That's what mental elevation and moral refinement look like in practice. You decide, will you vibrate in fear, anger, and doubt, or will you align with wisdom, strength, and love, knowing that these are higher frequencies connected to the whole and divine essence? But let's be clear, self-mastery isn't easy, and the Kybalion never promises that it is. You'll be tested again and again. Life will bring situations meant to shake you, to see if you'll fall back into lower vibrations. But every test is also an opportunity for initiation, to prove to yourself that you can hold the higher pole, even when things get hard. And when you do, something amazing happens. You don't just transform yourself, you shift the energy of everyone around you. Because when someone holds to truth and higher vibration, that frequency ripples outward, creating a new reality in its wake. And as we embrace this path of inner authority, we start to see life itself as a sharpening stone, a tool that refines us. The same world that wears down the weak becomes the tool that strengthens the wise. Every challenge becomes a training ground for mental alchemy and spiritual evolution. And that leads us right into a deeper question. If self-mastery is the key, why is personal transformation so difficult? And how do we face that inner battle when it feels like we're fighting ourselves? Well, that's exactly what we're about to explore as we dive into the challenge of personal transformation. Chapter 10. The Challenge of Personal Transformation. If mastering yourself is the highest goal in Hermeticism, then it's no surprise that personal transformation is also the greatest challenge you'll ever face. The Kybalion doesn't sugarcoat this journey. The path of initiation is a battle, and sometimes the battlefield is inside your own mind. Think about the metaphor from the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna stands frozen in the middle of a war, torn between fear and duty. That battlefield, it's inside us all. It's the struggle between who we are and who we know we're called to become. And until we face that inner war, true spiritual evolution remains just an idea, not a lived reality. And here's a hard truth. No one can fight that battle for you. Not a guru, not a book, not even a master like Hermes Trismegistus himself. Teachers can point the way, but they can't walk it for you. Self-mastery, mental transmutation, and the climb toward higher vibration. Those are choices you make every day, in every thought and every action. And yes, sometimes it feels impossible. But the Kybalion reminds us, when the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. Meaning, the answers come after you commit to walking the path, not before. Initiation is earned, and only through real effort. But let me say this. Every obstacle is a disguised opportunity for transformation. Every challenge you face, every temptation, every fear is life saying, are you ready to rise to a higher plane? It's like the universe is constantly testing if you'll choose the higher pole of polarity or if you'll fall back to the lower one. And that's why awareness is everything. Because when you can look at a challenge and say, this is my training ground for alchemy and self-mastery, suddenly you stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that's shaping you into who you are meant to be, a wisdom keeper, a vessel of sacred knowledge. And let's be honest, comfort is often the enemy of transformation. You grow stronger by facing discomfort, not by avoiding it. The Kybalion aligns perfectly with Eastern teachings like the Bhagavad Gita on this. If life gives you everything easily, without struggle, how would you ever refine yourself? Polarity and vibration exist so that you have the friction needed for growth. And here's where mental elevation becomes crucial. When you choose to see every hardship as a tool for building strength and virtue, you move up the vibrational plane, transforming even pain into power. And as we reflect on that, it naturally leads to one final step. How do we apply all of this, consciously and practically, in our daily lives? Because knowing about polarity, vibration, and Hermetic wisdom is only half the journey. The real test is what you do when the moment comes to choose between reacting or transforming. So let's move now into exactly that, the practical application of polarity, and how you can use it every day to shape yourself and your reality in alignment with the universal laws. Chapter 11. The Practical Application of Polarity in Daily Life. Now, let's get real, because knowing about polarity and vibration is one thing, but applying these principles every day is where real alchemy happens. The Kybalion makes it clear you are constantly moving along the scale of polarity, whether you realize it or not. So the real question is, are you moving by conscious choice or just reacting to life? One of the simplest yet most powerful things you can do is curate your environment. Yes, it's that practical. Surround yourself with noble vibrations, books like the Kybalion, music that lifts you, conversations that bring insight, not gossip or negativity. Because everything you expose yourself to is shaping your vibrational plane, pushing you toward higher or lower poles. Another key practice is to become radically aware of what you consume emotionally and mentally. Think about it. Every piece of music, every movie, every conversation has a vibration. When you constantly watch violent, dark, or shallow content, you are tuning your mind to that frequency. And don't be surprised if your thoughts and emotions start vibrating on that level. Hermetic wisdom teaches that you are responsible for what you allow into your mind and heart, because what you invite in becomes what you give out. So if you want to live in higher frequencies, peace, strength, wisdom, you have to actively choose what feeds those vibrations. And here's something practical you can do today. Catch yourself in a lower emotion, like anger, fear, or jealousy, and consciously name its opposite. Then ask, how can I shift 1 degree closer to that opposite? For example, if you're feeling anger, what would 1 degree toward patience look like? Not perfection, just 1 step. This is how mental transmutation works in real life. Not by pretending negative emotions don't exist, but by recognizing that within every emotion lies its opposite, waiting to be activated. And every time you choose to shift, you exercise the muscle of self-mastery and refine your moral vibration. Also, remember that vibration is social. It's shared. So who you spend time with matters deeply. If you're constantly surrounded by people who vibrate in fear, anger, or mediocrity, it takes massive effort to hold a higher state. But when you seek out conversations with people who are committed to spiritual evolution, consciousness, and wisdom, something amazing happens. Your own vibration rises naturally. This is why Hermetic circles and wisdom communities are so powerful. Together, aligned with universal laws, people help lift each other in ways that are impossible alone. So if you haven't found your circle yet, maybe it's time to start creating one. And here's the final piece. With knowledge comes responsibility. Once you understand the principle of polarity and how vibration shapes your life, you can't unlearn it. You're now accountable for choosing your pole, for deliberately aligning with higher truths. And that responsibility is sacred, because when you master this, you don't just transform yourself. You become a guide, an example, a living transmission of sacred knowledge. And as we approach the closing reflections on this entire path, we'll see why this lifelong process of transformation and fidelity to higher principles is the very essence of walking as an initiate in this world. Chapter 12. The Closing Reflection. So here we are. After walking through the Kybalion's principles, polarity, vibration, and the path of spiritual evolution, one truth stands out above all. The human journey is a path of self-definition and fidelity to higher principles. You are not here to live by accident, tossed around by circumstances. You are here to choose who you will become, moment by moment, thought by thought. And that choice is never finished. Transformation is a lifelong process, a constant dance between what you are now and what you are capable of becoming. This is what Hermeticism calls us to. Not just knowing universal laws, but embodying them through every breath, every action. It's easy to think that once you learn something like the principle of polarity, the work is done. But the Kybalion teaches us that true wisdom is alive, dynamic, and demands practice. Every day, life will give you chances to either align with the sacred flame of consciousness or fall back into mechanical reactions. And this is why mental elevation, symbolic language, and self-mastery are not theories to admire from a distance. They are tools to be sharpened in the fires of daily experience. Because when you choose to act from higher vibration, even when it's hard, you are not just changing yourself. You are contributing to the cosmic order, helping to rebalance the energies of the world. And let's be honest, strength is built in struggle. The Kybalion doesn't hide the fact that polarity exists so that we can refine ourselves. The pendulum swings, life tests us, and in those moments, who you truly are is forged. Just like gold is refined in fire, virtue and wisdom are refined through living. So when life challenges you, when anger, fear, or sorrow try to take over, remember, this is your moment to choose. Will you move toward the higher pole? Will you align with the whole, the divine essence, and cosmic unity? That's what spiritual initiation looks like. Not some abstract ceremony, but real life, every single day. And perhaps most importantly, the Kybalion reminds us that sharing what you learn is part of the path. Knowledge is not meant to be hoarded. It's a sacred flame passed from one soul to another. Every time you speak truth, every time you live in alignment with universal laws, you are transmitting esoteric wisdom, keeping it alive for future generations. Think of the sages who came before us, who preserved Hermetic teachings, Eastern philosophy, and Pythagorean insights, often at great cost. Now you are part of that unbroken chain of wisdom keepers. And what you choose to do with this knowledge matters, not just for you, but for the whole of humanity. And as we close this cycle of reflection, one final question remains. Who do you choose to be from this day forward? Because in the end, the human condition is about becoming, about striving to live as a conscious part of the cosmic order. And as we open this door, we'll see that this isn't the end, but the beginning of a deeper journey, a journey that requires constant vigilance, strength, and alignment with the highest truths. Conclusion: no one could do this work for you. Now let me ask you, what polarity are you living from right now? Are you vibrating in fear, anger, and doubt? Or are you choosing courage, love, and wisdom? Because if the Kybalion taught us anything, it's this: you have the power to shift, but only if you take responsibility for your vibration. No more waiting for life to change. You're the one who moves along that scale. So what will it be? Are you going to keep letting your past define you? Or are you finally ready to transmute those old patterns and step into who you were meant to be? And think about this. How many times have you let anger or fear run your life when you could have chosen strength or peace instead? What would happen if, starting today, you made a conscious decision to shift your polarity, even just 1 degree? Imagine the changes in your relationships, your mindset, your opportunities. This isn't theory. This is practical alchemy, and you don't need to master it overnight. Start now in small ways. The next time fear rises, choose courage. The next time anger comes, breathe and choose compassion. Every small shift builds your inner power. But here's the thing, no one can do this work for you. The masters, the sages, even Hermes Trismegistus, they can show you the way, but you have to walk it. And now that you've heard this truth, you can't unhear it. You know how vibration and polarity shape reality. So what are you going to do with that knowledge? Will you let it sit in your mind, or will you apply it every day to transform yourself and inspire others by example? Because the world needs more people aligned with universal laws, people who can hold the sacred flame of wisdom and light the way for others. So tell me, what polarity are you ready to shift in your life right now? Drop in the comments. Let's make this real. Maybe it's fear to courage or hate to love. Maybe it's doubt to faith. Let's talk about it below. You're not alone in this path. There's a whole community of seekers walking this road together. And if this spoke to you, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we're going deeper into the Kybalion, Hermeticism, and the real tools for mental transmutation and spiritual evolution. Because at the end of the day, the question is simple. Are you ready to choose the higher pole? Or are you going to stay stuck, watching life pass you by? You already know the answer. Now it's time to act.